November 24th, 1971. A man in a business suit orders a bourbon and soda, leans over to a flight attendant, and calmly whispers 3 words that would spark the greatest mystery in aviation history. "I have a bomb." 2 hours later, he stepped off the rear of a Boeing 727 into a freezing rainstorm with $200,000 strapped to his waist. He didn't just jump into the night, he jumped into legend.
A hijacker calling himself D.B. Cooper jumped from an airliner in flight
and demanded a $200,000 ransom and a parachute.
305, we have a hijack in progress.
He said to me, all I have to do is attach this wire to this gadget here, and we all be dead.
On the eve of Thanksgiving, Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 was preparing for a routine 30-minute hop from Portland to Seattle. Among the holiday travelers was a man calling himself Dan Cooper. He was the picture of mid-century anonymity. Mid-40s, dark suit, white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. He carried a briefcase and a simple paper bag. There was nothing about him that suggested a plan bold enough to leave the FBI slack-jawed for the next 50 years. He paid $20 in cash for his one-way ticket, an inconspicuous start to a massive crime. Settling into seat 18C, he ordered his drink and waited for the wheels to leave the tarmac. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. Thinking he was just another lonely businessman trying to give her his phone number, she dropped the note into her purse without looking. Cooper leaned closer. His voice was low, devoid of panic. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." When she opened the briefcase, she saw the fantastic truth. 8 red cylinders attached to wires and a large battery. Cooper's demands were cold and specific. $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by on the runway in Seattle. He told her, "No funny stuff." When the plane landed in Seattle, the atmosphere was a strange mix of clinical precision and hidden terror. The 36 passengers were told there was a mechanical delay. They were released only after the cash and parachutes were delivered. This wasn't a frantic hijacking. It was a choreography. Once the plane was refueled, Cooper ordered the cockpit to fly toward Mexico City. He gave them a strange set of flight parameters. Keep the altitude below 10,000 feet, keep the flaps at 15 degrees, and leave the landing gear down. Most importantly, he chose the Boeing 727, the only commercial jet at the time with an aft staircase that could be lowered in flight. The night was brutal. Somewhere between Seattle and Reno, in a pitch-black sky filled with 200-mile-per-hour winds and a freezing rainstorm, the aft stairs were lowered. Cooper tied the ransom money to his body, donned a parachute, and descended into the abyss. He was wearing loafers and a trench coat. He was jumping into the rugged, unforgiving wilderness of the Pacific Northwest with zero visibility. When the plane finally landed in Reno, the stairs were dragging on the tarmac, and seat 18C was empty. The man, the money, and the mystery had vanished into the rain. The FBI launched Norjak, short for Northwest Hijacking, the most exhaustive manhunt in the history of the Bureau. They had fragments of a man, a black clip-on tie, a mother-of-pearl tie clip, and 66 unidentified fingerprints. They cataloged the serial numbers of every single $20 bill in the ransom. They expected the money to start turning up in banks within weeks. Days turned into months, months into years. Silence. Then, in 1980, the silence was broken. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging a fire pit at Tina Bar along the Columbia River. He unearthed 3 bundles of decaying cash, totaling $5,800. The serial numbers matched the Cooper ransom, but the discovery only deepened the mystery. The bills weren't scattered by the wind or river. They were still held together by rubber bands, buried in a way that suggested they had been placed there deliberately. If Cooper had died in the jump, where was the rest of the $200,000? And where was his body? The FBI file eventually grew to over 40 feet in length, yet they never found a face to match the name. The question remains, was Cooper a master criminal or a lucky amateur? 5 months after the jump, a man named Richard Floyd McCoy hijacked a Boeing 727 in a nearly identical fashion. He demanded parachutes and used the exact same "no funny stuff" phrasing. McCoy was a seasoned skydiver and a Vietnam veteran. When McCoy was caught, many investigators were convinced they had their man. But the pieces didn't fit. The flight attendants from Flight 305 insisted McCoy didn't look like Cooper. McCoy also had an alibi that placed him at home the day after the original hijacking. Was McCoy Cooper? Or had he simply read the headlines and decided to repeat the perfect crime? McCoy was eventually killed in a shootout with the FBI after escaping prison, leaving the link between the two men unproven. Over the decades, confessions surfaced like ghosts. Dwayne Weber told his wife on his deathbed, "I am Dan Cooper." Kenneth Christensen, a former paratrooper and Northwest Airlines employee, became a leading suspect when it was discovered he bought a house with cash shortly after the hijacking. But the most compelling clues are forensic. In 2011, scientists using scanning electron microscopes analyzed Cooper's tie. They found microscopic particles of pure titanium, cerium, and strontium sulfide. These weren't common materials in 1971. They were used in high-end aerospace labs and chemical plants. This suggests Cooper wasn't just a drifter. He was an insider. He likely worked for Boeing or a high-tech contractor. Yet, this creates a massive contradiction. If he was an expert, why did he choose a dummy parachute, one that had been sewn shut for training, as his primary chute? Why did he jump into a freezing storm in a suit and loafers? Was it a calculated risk, or the recklessness of a man who had nothing left to lose? In 2016, the FBI officially closed the case. They concluded that Cooper likely died the moment he hit the air. The weather was too cold, his gear was too poor, and the terrain was a death trap. But skeptics point to the lack of evidence. 50 years of logging, hiking, and searching has never revealed a single scrap of a parachute, a piece of clothing, or a human bone. D.B. Cooper lives on because he represents the ultimate vanishing act. He is a man with no confirmed identity and no confirmed death, only a question suspended in midair. Did he survive the impact and walk into a new life? Or is he still out there, a skeleton in a suit, buried under 5 decades of Washington pine needles? The mystery remains because it offers no closure. It is the story of a man who took the ultimate leap and, in doing so, became immortal.